You did not hear this by accident. I want you to pause for a moment and really feel what that means. In a world overflowing with noise, endless voices, flashing images, constant information pulling at your attention every second, the simple fact that you are here listening to these words right now is not random. Something inside you responded. Not the logical part of your mind, not the part trained by habit and routine, but a quieter and deeper awareness that recognized something familiar. That awareness heard a signal and it brought you here. You may think you simply clicked on this by curiosity. Maybe you told yourself you would listen for a minute and move on. Yet you are still here. And the reason is simple. Consciousness always moves toward recognition. Whenever truth appears in a form you are ready to perceive, something inside you leans toward it without effort. That movement feels small and almost invisible, but it is powerful. It is the same force that has guided every moment of your life, even when you believed you were wandering without direction. Think about the moments in your life that seemed strange when they first happened. A sentence someone spoke that stayed with you for years. A book you discovered exactly when you needed guidance. A conversation that appeared ordinary but later changed the way you understood yourself. At the time, these events may have felt like coincidence. You might have said life is unpredictable and chaotic. Yet when you look back, you start to see a pattern forming quietly beneath the surface of your memories. Events appear to connect across time as if something invisible had been arranging them all along. You have felt that mysterious recognition before. There were times when you walked into a place you had never visited, yet something inside you whispered that you had been there before. You met someone for the first time and felt an unexpected familiarity, as if your stories had already crossed paths somewhere beyond the reach of memory. Your mind tried to explain it away with logic. You called it coincidence or imagination, but the feeling remained because another part of you understood something deeper. That feeling is not an illusion. It is the echo of memory that does not belong to the brain but to consciousness itself. Long before you gave yourself the name you use today, long before you began the story you call your life, you knew a truth that required no explanation. You knew that awareness is the foundation of everything that exists. You knew that the world you see is not the origin of reality but its reflection. Yet when you entered this human experience, you stepped through a gentle mist that softened that memory. That mist was not a punishment and it was not a mistake. It was a necessary part of the journey. Without forgetting, discovery would have no meaning. Without the appearance of separation, reunion would never feel miraculous. The mist allowed you to experience contrast. It allowed you to move through darkness so that light could become something you choose rather than something you automatically know. Since childhood, you were taught to trust your senses above all else. You learned to believe that what you see outside of you is the ultimate authority. Circumstances were presented as facts. The world appeared solid and unchangeable. Slowly, a story formed in your mind telling you that you are a small individual living inside a massive universe governed by forces beyond your control. That story felt convincing because the mist of forgetting made it appear real, but sometimes the mist trembles slightly. There are quiet moments when the story does not feel complete anymore. You may have noticed those moments when you sit alone in silence, or when you look at the night sky and feel a strange familiarity with the vastness above you. Something inside begins to question the limits you once accepted without hesitation. You start to sense that life may be deeper than the simple narrative you were given. That subtle questioning is the beginning of awakening. It does not arrive as a dramatic revelation. It begins gently, like the first hint of light before sunrise. You might not even notice it at first. It appears as curiosity. It appears as a feeling that there must be more to existence than what you have been told. And once that feeling appears, it continues to grow quietly. This is the moment where your journey truly begins. Not a journey towards something far away, but a journey back towards something that has always been present within you. The truth is not hidden in distant places or secret teachings. It waits in the awareness that is listening to these words right now. As you continue to listen, you may begin to feel that familiar resonance again. The quiet recognition that whispers you already know this, because the deepest truths do not arrive as information, they arrive as remembrance. When consciousness recognizes itself, it feels simple and obvious, as if the answer had always been waiting just beneath the surface of your thoughts. That is why the most powerful realizations often come with a calm sense of familiarity rather than surprise. So, as you listen, I invite you to relax your effort to analyze every word. Let the ideas move through you like a gentle current. Your mind does not need to struggle to understand. Simply allow the awareness within you to recognize what it already knows. In that recognition, something remarkable begins to happen. The mist that once covered your vision slowly becomes transparent, and the world you thought you understood begins to reveal a deeper dimension. Right now you are standing at the threshold of that realization. Nothing dramatic has happened yet. The room around you is the same. Your life has not suddenly transformed, but inside you something subtle has shifted. Awareness has turned its gaze inward, and once that movement begins, it cannot truly be reversed. The light that begins as a single spark eventually grows into clarity. You may not see it fully yet, but the simple act of listening has already begun the process. Something inside you has started to remember, and once remembrance begins, the path unfolds naturally because the truth you are searching for has never been separate from you. There is a curtain between worlds, and most people live their entire lives without realizing it exists. I am not speaking about a physical wall or a mystical barrier floating somewhere in space. The curtain I am talking about is far more subtle and far more powerful. It is the thin layer of perception through which you interpret everything you see. It is the filter that turns infinite reality into the limited world you believe is solid and unquestionable. From the moment you were born, you were trained to trust your senses completely. You were taught that what your eyes see must be real and what your hands touch must be solid. Slowly, the world began to appear fixed and unchanging. Buildings felt permanent. Time moved forward in a straight line. Cause and effect seemed obvious, and because everyone around you shared the same assumptions, the illusion became even stronger. Yet there are moments when the curtain trembles. Perhaps you have felt it before without knowing what it was. It might happen late at night when the world becomes quiet and your thoughts slow down. It might appear when you look at something ordinary, like the movement of clouds or the reflection of light on water, and suddenly the moment feels deeper than it should. Something inside you pauses, and for a brief instant the world feels almost transparent. In those moments, you are touching the edge of the curtain. You are sensing that the surface of reality is not the whole story. Beneath everything you see, there is a living field of awareness. It is not separate from the world. It is the foundation of it. Everything that appears solid is actually moving within this invisible field. Thoughts move through it. Emotions ripple across it. Every intention you hold sends subtle waves into it. The ancient mystics understood this truth long before modern science began to approach it. They described the world not as a collection of objects, but as a dance of energy and consciousness. They spoke about a veil that makes the infinite appear finite. They said that when the mind becomes still enough, the veil begins to thin, and the deeper nature of reality reveals itself. This curtain is woven from belief and attention. Every thought you repeat adds another thread to it. Every assumption about what is possible strengthens its texture. When you believe the world is fixed, you experience it as fixed. When you believe circumstances control your life, you begin to see evidence everywhere confirming that belief. The curtain becomes thicker not because reality changes, but because your perception grows more rigid. But the remarkable truth is that the curtain is not meant to imprison you. It exists so that consciousness can explore itself through limitation. Without the appearance of boundaries, there would be no experience of discovery. Without the illusion of separation, there would be no feeling of reunion. The curtain allows the infinite to play the game of becoming human. Imagine standing before a vast stage where an extraordinary play is unfolding. Actors move across the scene, wearing costumes that make them appear as kings, strangers, friends and enemies. If you forget that it is a play, you begin to react to the drama as if it were absolute reality. You may feel fear, anger, or despair. Yet the moment you remember that it is a performance, your perspective changes completely. The emotions are still present, but they no longer control you. The curtain of perception works in a similar way. It allows you to become immersed in the story of life. You experience joy and heartbreak. You feel success and disappointment, but behind every scene there is still the quiet presence of awareness observing it all. That awareness is the part of you that never changes no matter what events unfold. Many people try to tear the curtain apart through force. They search desperately for extraordinary experiences, hoping that something dramatic will reveal the truth. But the curtain does not respond to struggle. It responds to stillness. The more you relax your grip on certainty, the more the veil begins to soften. Awareness does not break through the curtain. It simply sees through it. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a thin, luminous fabric stretching across your perception. It is made of light and mist rather than solid threads. Each breath you take causes the fabric to shimmer slightly. You do not need to pull it away. Simply watch it with calm attention. Slowly, the texture begins to change. Shapes of light appear behind it, moving with quiet intelligence. You start to sense that the world behind the curtain is not different from the world in front of it. It is the same reality seen with deeper clarity. The trees remain trees. The sky remains the sky. Yet everything feels alive with presence. Every movement carries meaning. Every sound feels connected to the whole. This is why awakening is not an escape from the world. It is the recognition of the world as it truly is. The curtain was never hiding reality from you. It was shaping the way you saw it. When perception becomes gentle and open, the veil naturally dissolves, and what remains is the living field that was always there. As you continue to listen, you may begin to notice subtle shifts inside yourself. Your breathing becomes slower. Your attention moves inward. Thoughts pass by without the need to follow each one. These small changes are signs that the curtain is already beginning to loosen. The mind is no longer gripping the old story with the same intensity. And once the curtain begins to move, it rarely returns to its previous state. A single glimpse behind it is enough to plant a quiet certainty in your awareness. You may still live in the same world, walk the same streets and speak with the same people. Yet something fundamental has changed. You know that what you see is only the surface of a deeper reality. This realization does not separate you from life. It brings you closer to it. The world stops feeling mechanical and begins to feel alive. Events no longer appear random. Moments start to connect like notes in a larger symphony. You begin to sense that consciousness itself is moving through every experience, guiding you gently toward understanding. And as that understanding grows, the curtain becomes lighter and more transparent. Eventually, you recognize something extraordinary. The curtain was never outside of you. It was created by the way you looked at the world. The moment your perception changes, the barrier fades and the deeper reality shines through everything you see. Before you were born into this life, there was something you understood with complete clarity. You knew the nature of consciousness. You knew that awareness was not confined to a single body or a single moment in time. You knew that existence itself was an endless field of life, expressing through countless forms. Yet when you entered this world, something remarkable happened. You passed through a gentle mist that softened your memory of that truth. This mist is what I call the great forgetting. At first, this idea may seem strange. You might wonder why anyone would choose to forget something so profound. If awareness is infinite and complete, why would it hide its own knowledge? The answer is simpler than it appears. Experience requires contrast. Discovery requires mystery. Without the appearance of limitation, the journey of awakening would have no meaning. Imagine reading a story where the ending is revealed on the first page. Every twist and every challenge would lose its power because the conclusion is already known. The beauty of the story comes from the unfolding. The characters move through uncertainty and growth until the final moment of realization appears. Life works in a similar way. The forgetting was not an error. It was the opening chapter of the story you came here to experience. When consciousness chooses to explore itself through human life, it accepts a temporary limitation. Awareness narrows its focus until it appears as a single identity moving through a world of other identities. The infinite becomes personal. The eternal becomes temporary. The limitless becomes a person with a name and a history. In that moment, the great adventure begins. This does not mean the deeper truth disappears. It simply becomes hidden beneath layers of perception. Think of it as sunlight shining behind clouds. The clouds can obscure the brightness for a time, but the sun itself has not changed. The same is true for your awareness. The light of consciousness has never left you. It only became hidden by the beliefs and experiences that formed your sense of self. From childhood, you were taught who you are supposed to be. You learned your name. You learned your role in your family and your place in society. Each lesson added another layer to the identity you now call yourself. Slowly, the memory of your deeper nature moved further into the background. The story of the person became louder than the silent awareness observing it. Yet something inside you always remembered. It appears as intuition. It appears as the quiet feeling that there must be more to life than the routine patterns you see around you. Even in moments when you felt lost, there was a subtle sense that the story was still unfolding towards something meaningful. That inner pull is the reason forgetting was necessary. Without the experience of searching, the moment of remembering would not feel transformative. Without the experience of darkness, the return of light would not feel extraordinary. The journey through limitation allows awareness to rediscover itself with fresh understanding. Consider how a child learns about the world. A child does not begin with complete knowledge. Instead, the child explores through curiosity and experience. Every discovery brings excitement because it reveals something new. Consciousness approaches human life with a similar curiosity. By entering the world without full memory, it allows each realization to become a moment of wonder. The forgetting also creates freedom. If every truth were permanently visible, there would be no room for choice. The veil of uncertainty allows you to decide what you believe. It allows you to choose love or fear. It allows you to explore different perspectives and discover which ones lead to deeper awareness. This freedom is essential because awakening is not forced. It is chosen. Many spiritual traditions describe this process as the soul descending into experience. The word descent may sound negative, but it is actually an act of courage. Awareness willingly moves into the density of human life so it can explore every aspect of existence: joy and sorrow, connection and separation, success and failure. Each experience becomes a lesson, revealing another layer of truth. When you look at your life through this lens, your challenges begin to appear differently. Difficult moments are no longer random obstacles. They are part of the unfolding path that eventually leads you back to recognition. Every question you ask about the meaning of life is a sign that the remembering has already begun. You might think that forgetting placed you at a disadvantage, but the opposite is true. The great forgetting gave you the opportunity to rediscover the truth from within your own awareness. Instead of simply inheriting knowledge, you experience it directly. When realization arises, it belongs to you because you have walked the path that revealed it. This is why the moments of awakening feel so powerful. They do not arrive as information from the outside. They appear as a deep sense of recognition inside your own consciousness. Suddenly, something that once seemed mysterious becomes obvious. You realize that the truth was present all along, waiting for you to notice it. The journey from forgetting to remembering is the essence of the human experience. Each insight removes another layer of the mist. Each moment of clarity reveals a little more of the light that has always been within you. Over time, the identity you once believed was permanent begins to feel like a role rather than your true self. When this understanding deepens, the story of your life changes in subtle ways. You no longer see yourself as a small individual struggling against an indifferent universe. Instead, you begin to sense that the universe itself is expressing through you. The events of your life become part of a larger pattern guiding awareness back toward recognition. So the question is not why you forgot. The real question is what happens when you begin to remember. Every realization brings you closer to the awareness that was present before the story of your life began. And as that awareness becomes clearer, the mist that once hid it starts to dissolve quietly. Even now, as you listen, there may be a faint sense of familiarity moving through your thoughts. Something inside you is responding not because these ideas are new, but because they resonate with a deeper memory. The remembering has already started. And once that process begins, the journey toward clarity unfolds naturally because the truth you are rediscovering has always been part of who you are. There is an illusion that shapes almost every human experience. And that illusion is the belief that you are separate. Separate from other people. Separate from life. Separate from the intelligence that moves the universe itself. From the moment you became aware of the world, you began to see differences everywhere. You saw your body as something distinct from other bodies. You learned to divide reality into categories: mine and yours, self and other, inside and outside. These divisions seemed natural because everyone around you believed in them as well. Over time, the idea of separation became so familiar that it felt like an unquestionable fact. Yet the truth is far more mysterious and far more beautiful than that simple story. The sense of separation is not the foundation of reality. It is only a layer of perception. It is a lens through which consciousness experiences itself as many instead of one. When awareness looks through this lens, it appears fragmented, as if countless individual lives are moving independently across the world. But beneath that appearance, the same field of consciousness continues to exist, connecting everything in ways that the ordinary mind rarely notices. You can begin to sense this truth by paying attention to the quiet moments when your heart responds to another human being without explanation. Perhaps you have felt a sudden wave of compassion for a stranger whose story you do not know. Perhaps you have experienced the strange familiarity of meeting someone for the first time, and yet feeling as though your lives were already intertwined. These moments reveal something subtle about the nature of awareness. They show that the boundary you imagine between yourself and others is more flexible than it appears. The illusion of separation was not created to deceive you. It was created to allow experience. Imagine a vast ocean that wishes to know itself. If the ocean remained perfectly still and uniform, it could not observe its own depth or movement. But when waves arise on its surface, the ocean begins to see itself from many perspectives. Each wave appears separate for a moment, rising and falling with its own unique shape. Yet every wave is still made of the same water. Human life works in a similar way. You appear as an individual wave moving through time, but the essence of what you are remains the same awareness that exists in every other form. The mind often resists this idea because it has been trained to focus on differences. It notices the contrast between people, the variations in culture, personality, language, and belief. Those differences are real at the surface level of experience, but they do not represent the deepest truth of existence. Beneath the visible forms, there is a shared field of life expressing through all of them. The same awareness that looks through your eyes is present in every other living being. Experiencing the world through a different perspective, you may have glimpsed this unity during moments of profound connection. It might happen when you sit quietly in nature and feel a calm presence surrounding you. The wind moves through the trees. Light reflects across the water. And for a brief instant, the boundary between observer and environment seems to disappear. In that moment, you are not standing apart from life. You are participating in it. The world feels alive because you are recognizing the same life that exists within yourself. Loneliness often arises when the mind forgets this deeper connection. When you believe you are isolated from everything around you, the world begins to feel distant and indifferent. Yet the feeling of loneliness itself carries an important message. It is a signal from awareness reminding you of the unity that once felt natural. The longing for connection exists because a deeper part of you remembers that connection is the truth of your existence. Every act of compassion quietly dissolves the illusion of separation. When you extend kindness toward another person, you are acknowledging that their experience matters as much as your own. In that simple gesture, the boundaries created by the mind begin to soften. Awareness recognizes itself across the apparent distance between two individuals. The same life that moves through you moves through them as well. This realization changes the way you see the world. Instead of viewing other people as strangers moving through unrelated stories, you begin to sense a hidden continuity linking every life together. Each encounter becomes an opportunity to rediscover that connection. Even conflict and misunderstanding take on new meaning because they reveal aspects of yourself reflected in another form. When the illusion of separation loosens its hold, you start to notice how deeply interconnected everything truly is. The air you breathe was once part of countless other lives. Every word you speak influences the thoughts and emotions of the people who hear it. Every choice you make sends subtle ripples through the larger field of awareness. Life begins to feel less like a collection of isolated events and more like a living network of relationships continuously shaping one another. This does not erase individuality. Each person remains a unique expression of consciousness with their own experiences and perspectives. The difference is that individuality no longer implies isolation. Instead, it becomes a way for awareness to explore its infinite possibilities through many forms at once. Just as waves rise and fall within the same ocean, human lives unfold within the same field of awareness. When you recognize this truth, something inside you relaxes. The constant pressure to defend your separate identity begins to fade. You realize that the world is not filled with strangers, but with reflections of the same consciousness appearing in different shapes and stories. The sense of unity does not remove the challenges of life, but it transforms the way you respond to them. You begin to see that every interaction carries meaning, because every person you meet represents another perspective of the same living awareness. Compassion grows naturally when you understand that the boundaries you once believed were absolute are actually temporary patterns within a much larger whole. The illusion of separation loses its authority, and what remains is a quiet recognition of connection. And when that recognition deepens, you discover something extraordinary. The awareness looking through your eyes is not confined to a single identity. It is the same awareness experiencing life everywhere at once. What once appeared as countless separate stories reveals itself as one vast expression of consciousness exploring itself through many forms. There is a light within you that has never gone out. I want you to hear that clearly, because most people spend their lives believing the opposite. They believe the light comes and goes. They believe it appears only during moments of happiness and disappears when life becomes difficult. But the truth is very different. The light does not come and go. Only your awareness of it changes. The light has been present since before your first memory, and it will remain long after every story you tell about yourself has faded. What changes is the attention you give to it. From the beginning of your life, you learn to focus outward. You learn to look at circumstances, achievements, failures, relationships, and everything that seemed to define who you are. Slowly, the world outside became louder than the quiet presence within you. When things went well, you felt bright and confident. When things went wrong, you felt dim and uncertain. Over time, you began to believe that your value depended on the conditions surrounding you. Yet beneath every success and every disappointment, the same quiet awareness remained unchanged. Think about a cloudy day. The sky may appear dark and heavy, and the sunlight may seem completely absent, but you know that the sun has not disappeared. It is still shining with the same intensity beyond the clouds. The clouds simply block your view for a time. Your inner light works in exactly the same way. Emotions, fears, doubts, and memories move across your awareness like clouds passing through the sky. Sometimes they are thin and brief. Sometimes they are dense and lingering. But none of them have the power to extinguish the light itself. They only change how clearly you perceive it. This hidden light is not something you must earn or create. It is the essence of your awareness. It is the silent presence that notices every thought and every feeling as they appear. Even in moments when your mind feels restless, there is still a part of you that observes the restlessness. That observing presence is the light I am speaking about. It is steady and patient, waiting quietly for your attention to return to it. Many people search for this light in extraordinary experiences. They imagine that awakening must arrive with dramatic visions or powerful revelations. They look for something outside themselves that will suddenly transform their lives. Yet the light does not hide in distant places. It hides in the simplest moments of awareness. It appears when you pause long enough to notice the space between your thoughts. It appears when you breathe slowly and allow your attention to settle inside your own presence. You may remember moments when this inner brightness revealed itself unexpectedly. Perhaps it happened during a quiet walk when the world suddenly felt peaceful and complete. Perhaps it appeared during a conversation when you felt deeply connected to another person without needing to explain why. In those moments, the mind becomes quiet, and the light of awareness shines naturally. Nothing new is created. You are simply recognizing what has always been there. The difficulty arises because the mind is accustomed to constant movement. Thoughts race from one idea to another, searching for problems to solve or stories to repeat. This restless activity draws your attention away from the stillness where the light becomes visible. When the mind is busy, you may feel as though something essential is missing. You may believe you must struggle to regain a sense of clarity. Yet the struggle itself only creates more noise that hides the light again. The secret is surprisingly simple. The light reveals itself whenever you allow your awareness to rest in the present moment. You do not have to force anything or push your thoughts away. You only need to notice the quiet space that exists beneath them. In that space, there is a sense of calm that does not depend on circumstances. Even when emotions are intense, the calm presence remains available. As you begin to recognize this presence more often, your relationship with life changes. Situations that once seemed overwhelming begin to lose their power over you. Instead of reacting automatically, you observe what is happening with greater clarity. You realize that the events around you are temporary movements within a much larger field of awareness. The light inside you remains steady while everything else continues to change. This realization brings a new kind of confidence. It is not the confidence that comes from controlling every outcome. It is the confidence that comes from knowing the foundation of your awareness cannot be damaged by external events. When you remember the light within you, fear begins to soften, doubt becomes less convincing. Even challenges start to appear as opportunities to rediscover the strength that has always been present. The hidden light also changes the way you relate to others. When you recognize the same presence within yourself, you begin to sense it in everyone you meet. Beneath the surface of personality and behavior, there is a shared awareness connecting every human life. This recognition naturally awakens compassion. You understand that others are also navigating their own clouds of confusion and emotion, while the same inner light waits patiently within them. There will still be moments when the clouds feel heavy. Life will continue to bring experiences that challenge your understanding. But each time you return your attention inward, the light becomes clearer again. Over time, the habit of remembering grows stronger than the habit of forgetting. The clouds still pass through the sky, but they no longer convince you that the sun has disappeared. Eventually, you begin to live with a quiet certainty that the light within you is always present. It is present when you wake in the morning. It is present while you move through the ordinary activities of your day. It is present even during moments of confusion when your mind searches for answers. The light does not judge your experience or measure your progress. It simply shines, offering a constant invitation to return to awareness. And when you understand this deeply, something extraordinary happens. You stop searching for the light as though it was separate from you. Instead, you realize that the awareness listening to these words right now is the very light you have been seeking. It was never hidden anywhere else. It has always been the silent center of your experience, quietly illuminating every moment of your life. There is a way of seeing that does not depend on your physical eyes. I want you to consider this carefully, because most of your life you have been taught that sight belongs to the body. You were told that your eyes gather information and your mind interprets what they see. Yet there is another kind of vision that begins long before the eyes become involved. This vision belongs to awareness itself. It is what I call the eyes of the soul. You have already experienced this kind of seeing many times, even if you did not recognize it when it happened. There are moments when you meet someone and instantly feel what they are feeling without a single word being spoken. There are moments when you enter a room and sense the atmosphere before you consciously notice anything unusual. You might say something feels right or something feels wrong, even though you cannot explain why. These experiences are small examples of the deeper perception that lives within you. The eyes of the soul do not analyze the world the way the mind does. They do not divide experience into categories and labels. Instead, they perceive essence. They sense the underlying movement of life beneath appearances. When this inner vision becomes clear, you begin to notice that everything around you carries a certain vibration. Every person, every place, every moment has a tone that your awareness can feel directly. The physical eyes are designed to observe form. They measure shape, color, distance, and movement. But the eyes of the soul perceive meaning. They reveal the subtle patterns connecting one event to another. Through this deeper sight, you begin to understand that what appears ordinary may contain extraordinary significance. A conversation that seems casual might carry a message that changes the direction of your life. A quiet moment alone might reveal an insight that answers a question you have carried for years. Many people overlook this inner vision because they are too focused on what the surface of life appears to show them. The mind constantly demands explanation and certainty. It wants proof before it trusts what it feels. Yet the eyes of the soul operate in a different way. They recognize truth through resonance rather than analysis. Something inside you simply knows when an idea carries authenticity or when a situation holds deeper meaning. Think about the times when you felt an unexpected clarity about a decision. You might have considered several options with your logical mind and still felt uncertain. Then suddenly, a quiet knowing appeared that pointed you in a particular direction. The moment that knowing arrived, your body relaxed and your breath deepened. Even if the path ahead looked unfamiliar, you felt calm about moving forward. That calm recognition was not produced by your thoughts. It came from the deeper awareness that sees beyond the surface of circumstances. The eyes of the soul begin to open whenever the mind becomes still enough to allow awareness to expand. Stillness does not mean forcing your thoughts to stop. It means stepping back from the constant urge to follow every thought that appears. When you observe your thoughts instead of becoming lost in them, your attention naturally moves deeper into the field of awareness. In that quiet space, perception changes. You begin to notice subtleties that were invisible before. For example, you may start to sense the emotions behind another person's words rather than reacting only to the words themselves. You may notice how certain environments influence your mood without needing to analyze the reason. You may feel drawn towards certain experiences that seem to align perfectly with the direction your life is taking. These impressions come from the same inner vision that has always been available within you. When the eyes of the soul become clearer, you also begin to see yourself differently. Instead of identifying completely with the roles you play in life, you start to observe those roles from a wider perspective. You recognize that your thoughts and emotions are movements within awareness, rather than permanent definitions of who you are. This recognition creates space between your identity and the experiences passing through it. In that space, there is freedom. The world itself begins to appear more alive when you look through this deeper vision. Nature becomes more than scenery. The movement of wind through trees feels like a conversation with life itself. The rhythm of the ocean reflects the same rhythm that moves through your breath. Even the silence between sounds carries a presence that feels meaningful. It is as though the entire universe is quietly communicating through the patterns of existence. This does not mean that you suddenly gain supernatural abilities or mystical powers. The change is far simpler and far more profound. You begin to perceive reality without the constant interference of assumptions. The layers of interpretation that once covered your perception become thinner. What remains is a direct experience of life unfolding moment by moment. As this awareness grows, you realize that the eyes of the soul were never closed. They were only overshadowed by the habits of the mind. The moment you shift your attention inward, those habits lose their dominance. The deeper vision naturally reveals itself again. It does not require effort or struggle. It only requires your willingness to observe rather than react. There may be times when this vision fades into the background as the demands of daily life capture your attention. That is perfectly natural. The purpose is not to hold a constant state of heightened perception, but to remember that the ability exists within you. Each time you return to stillness, the clarity returns as well. Over time, the distance between ordinary perception and deeper awareness becomes smaller. Eventually, you begin to trust what you feel through the eyes of the soul. Decisions become simpler because you recognize the quiet signals guiding you. Relationships become more authentic because you sense the truth behind appearances. Even challenges become easier to navigate because you see the lessons hidden within them. The remarkable discovery is that this deeper vision does not separate you from the world. Instead, it connects you to it more intimately than before. You realize that awareness is not confined within your body but flows through every experience you encounter. The eyes of the soul are simply the awareness, recognizing itself everywhere it looks. And when you begin to live with this understanding, the world stops feeling like a collection of isolated objects. It becomes a living field of meaning and presence. Every moment contains a message for the awareness that is willing to see it. The eyes of the soul open quietly in that willingness, revealing that the truth you have been searching for has always been visible through the awareness that is looking right now. Reality is a mirror, and what it reflects is not simply the events happening around you. It reflects the state of consciousness within you. This idea may sound unusual at first because you have been trained to believe that the world exists independently from your awareness. You were taught that circumstances create your emotions and that events outside of you determine the direction of your life. Yet when you begin to observe carefully, you start to notice something remarkable. The way you experience reality changes according to the state of mind you carry into each moment. Imagine two people walking through the same city on the same day. They pass the same streets, see the same buildings, hear the same sounds, yet their experiences are completely different. One person sees beauty in small details, the warmth of sunlight on the pavement, the quiet rhythm of people moving through their lives. The other sees stress, noise, and irritation everywhere. The city itself has not changed, but the inner state of each observer transforms what the world appears to be. What they perceive is a reflection of their awareness. This is the beginning of understanding the mirror of reality. The world you see is not only shaped by external conditions, it is also shaped by the beliefs, emotions, and expectations you carry within you. Your awareness acts like a lens through which experience is interpreted. If that lens is clouded by fear or doubt, the world seems threatening and uncertain. When the lens becomes clear, the same world begins to reveal possibility and meaning. Think about the moments in your life when everything seemed to fall into place effortlessly. Opportunities appeared at the right time. Conversations flowed naturally. You felt confident and open to what life offered you. During those times, your inner state was aligned with a sense of possibility. Your awareness expected life to move in a positive direction, and as a result, you noticed the opportunities that supported that expectation. Now remember the moments when you felt overwhelmed or discouraged. Even simple tasks appeared difficult. Small problems felt larger than they actually were. It seemed as though nothing was cooperating with your plans. In those moments, your awareness was focused on limitation. Your mind searched for evidence that things were not working. And naturally, that is exactly what it found. The mirror of reality does not judge or choose what to reflect. It simply echoes the state of consciousness you hold. When you believe the world is against you, your attention finds experiences that confirm that belief. When you believe life is full of possibility, your awareness becomes sensitive to the paths that lead toward growth and discovery. This does not mean that every event in the world is directly controlled by your thoughts. Life is far more complex and interconnected than that simple idea. What it means is that your perception of events and your response to them are deeply influenced by your inner state. The mirror reflects not only circumstances, but also the meaning you give to those circumstances. When you begin to understand this principle, your relationship with life changes in a powerful way. Instead of trying to force the outer world to change first, you start by observing the state of awareness within you. You ask yourself what beliefs or expectations you are carrying into the moment. You notice how your thoughts influence the way you interpret what is happening around you. This awareness does not blame you for difficulties. It empowers you to recognize that you have a role in shaping the quality of your experience. By adjusting your inner state, you begin to influence the reflection that appears in your life. The mirror responds naturally because your perception of reality changes. Consider the way a mirror works in an ordinary room. If you stand in front of it with a smile, the reflection smiles back. If you stand with tension in your face, the reflection shows the same tension. Trying to change the reflection without changing your expression would make no sense. The reflection always follows the source. Reality behaves in a similar way with your awareness. When you cultivate calm and clarity within yourself, you begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles. When you approach situations with curiosity instead of fear, new possibilities reveal themselves. The mirror reflects the openness you bring to the moment. Over time, these small changes in perception accumulate, and your entire experience of life begins to shift. You may notice that people respond differently to you as well. When your inner state becomes more peaceful, your interactions carry a different energy. Conversations feel less defensive and more authentic. Others sense the calm presence you bring into the space, and their reactions naturally change. The mirror of reality extends through human relationships as well as personal experiences. Understanding the mirror of reality also invites you to observe your thoughts more carefully. Thoughts are not just fleeting mental activity. They influence the emotional tone through which you experience life. Repeated thoughts gradually shape your expectations, and those expectations guide what you notice in the world. When you become aware of this process, you gain the freedom to choose thoughts that support clarity instead of confusion. This does not require constant effort or strict control of your mind. It begins with simple awareness. Notice the tone of your thoughts as they arise. Notice how your body responds to different emotional states. When you recognize that your awareness shapes your perception, you naturally become more attentive to the quality of your inner experience. Over time, this understanding deepens into a quiet confidence. You realize that while you cannot control every external event, you can influence the way you meet each moment. By choosing awareness over automatic reaction, you allow the mirror of reality to reveal new possibilities. The world remains the same world, but your experience of it becomes richer and more meaningful. Instead of feeling trapped by circumstances, you begin to see life as a dynamic reflection of consciousness. Each moment becomes an opportunity to explore how awareness interacts with the environment around you. And as you continue observing this mirror, something remarkable happens. You start to see that reality is not separate from the awareness perceiving it. The reflection and the observer are part of the same living process. The world is not merely something you look at. It is something that responds to the presence you bring into it. When you understand this deeply, the mirror stops feeling like a mystery and becomes a reminder that the state of your awareness quietly shapes the way life reveals itself to you. There is a subtle veil that surrounds the human experience, and it is so gentle that most people never notice it. I call it the mist of forgetting. It does not appear like a wall, and it does not feel like a barrier. Instead, it moves quietly through your awareness, shaping the way you remember who you are. This mist does not erase the truth of your nature. It simply softens it, like morning fog that hides the landscape while the sun is still rising. Before you began this life, there was a clarity within consciousness that needed no explanation. Awareness recognized itself everywhere. There was no confusion about identity, no uncertainty about connection. Life was experienced as a continuous field of presence moving through every form. Yet when awareness entered the human story, something remarkable happened. The memory of that unity became less visible. The vastness of consciousness narrowed into the perspective of a single life. This narrowing created the feeling of individuality that you now call yourself. You began to see the world through personal experiences, personal memories, personal desires. The mist of forgetting allowed this focus to happen. Without it, the human journey would not feel real. The story of your life would feel like a brief moment within an infinite awareness, rather than a meaningful adventure unfolding step by step. Imagine waking from a dream where you fully believed every event was real. During the dream, you experienced emotions, choices, and consequences as though they were part of a complete reality. Only after waking did you recognize that the dream was a temporary world created by the mind. The mist of forgetting works in a similar way. It allows consciousness to become immersed in the dream of human life so that every experience feels authentic and significant. This does not mean the deeper truth disappears. The awareness beneath the mist remains exactly the same as it has always been. What changes is your ability to remember it clearly, the beliefs you adopt, the stories you repeat, and the expectations you carry slowly become the new framework through which you interpret the world. Over time, the memory of your deeper nature becomes quieter, like a distant melody that you once knew by heart, yet the melody is never completely lost. Even within the mist, there are moments when the memory begins to return. You may feel it as an unexpected sense of familiarity when encountering a new place or idea. You may notice it during a moment of silence when the mind suddenly becomes still and something deeper seems to awaken. These small glimpses are signs that the mist is not permanent. It shifts and moves according to your awareness. Intuition often arrives through these openings. It appears as a gentle feeling that guides you without needing logical explanation. You may sense the right path before your mind can justify it. You may feel drawn towards certain experiences without knowing why. These quiet signals come from the deeper awareness that exists beneath the mist of forgetting. They are reminders that the truth of who you are has never truly vanished. Synchronicity is another way the mist begins to thin. When events align in ways that seem too meaningful to be random, you may feel a sudden recognition that life is responding to something beyond ordinary cause and effect. A thought appears, and shortly afterward a situation arises that reflects it. A question forms in your mind, and the answer appears through a conversation, or a book, or a chance encounter. These moments reveal that consciousness is still communicating with itself, even through the veil of forgetting. The purpose of the mist is not to trap you in confusion. It exists to allow the experience of rediscovery. When something is temporarily hidden, it becomes meaningful to find it again. The joy of remembering carries a depth that constant knowledge cannot provide. The journey from forgetting to remembering transforms awareness into a living process rather than a fixed state. You may notice that as your awareness grows, the mist begins to feel thinner. The beliefs that once seemed unquestionable start to appear less solid. Ideas about limitation lose their authority. You begin to sense that the story you have been telling about yourself is only one interpretation among many possible perspectives. This realization does not destroy your identity. It simply reveals that your identity is more flexible than you once believed. When the mist begins to lift even slightly, the world feels different. Ordinary experiences become more vivid because you are observing them with fresh attention. Conversations carry deeper meaning because you are listening with presence instead of habit. Life becomes less mechanical and more alive. Each moment feels connected to something larger than the surface of events. This change happens gradually. The mist does not vanish all at once. Instead, it becomes more transparent over time. Every moment of awareness dissolves another layer of forgetfulness. Every insight allows the deeper memory of consciousness to return. The process is gentle and natural. Like sunlight, slowly dissolving morning fog, you may still encounter moments when the mist feels heavy again. Old patterns of thinking may reappear. Doubt may return and cause you to question the clarity you once felt. This is part of the human journey as well. The mist moves like weather across the sky of awareness. It comes and goes, yet the sky itself remains unchanged. The important discovery is that you are not the mist. You are the awareness observing it. Once you recognize this truth, the fog no longer controls your sense of identity. You can watch thoughts appear and disappear without believing that they define who you are. The deeper awareness begins to shine through every experience. Even those that once felt confusing or uncertain, eventually the mist becomes less convincing. You realize that forgetting was never meant to be permanent. It was simply part of the story that allowed consciousness to explore itself through human life. The memory of your true nature returns quietly, not as a dramatic revelation but as a calm understanding that grows stronger each time you remember to look within. And as this remembering deepens, something remarkable becomes clear. The awareness, listening to these words right now, is the same awareness that existed before the mist appeared. Nothing essential has been lost. The veil only softened your vision for a time so that the experience of rediscovery could unfold. Now each moment of awareness gently clears the fog, revealing the presence that has always been here beneath the mist of forgetting. There is a misunderstanding that has shaped the way many people see themselves and the world around them. They believe that light and darkness are enemies, that one must destroy the other in order for truth to exist. Yet this belief creates conflict inside the mind because darkness is not truly the opposite of light. Darkness is simply light that has not yet been seen clearly. When you begin to understand this, something inside you relaxes, because the struggle against yourself begins to fade. From the beginning of your life, you were taught to hide certain parts of who you are. You learned that some emotions were acceptable while others were not. You learned that certain thoughts should be expressed while others should be suppressed. Slowly, you created a division within your own awareness. The parts of yourself that felt bright and confident were placed in the open. The parts that felt uncertain, fearful, or wounded were pushed into the background where you hoped no one would see them. Over time, this hidden side of experience became what many people call the shadow. The shadow is not a separate force trying to harm you. It is simply the collection of feelings and memories that your mind has not yet fully understood. When these experiences are ignored, they do not disappear. They remain active beneath the surface of awareness, quietly influencing the way you see the world. A small fear can grow stronger when it is hidden. A painful memory can shape your reactions without you realizing it. This is why people sometimes feel confused by their own behavior. The shadow is moving behind the scenes of the mind. Many people believe the solution is to eliminate the shadow entirely. They try to focus only on positive thoughts and pleasant emotions. Yet, this approach creates even more tension because the shadow cannot be erased through denial. The moment you try to push it away, it becomes stronger. It demands attention because it carries a message that awareness has not yet heard. The path toward clarity begins when you stop treating the shadow as an enemy. Instead of resisting it, you become curious about it. You observe the feelings that arise within you without immediately judging them. Fear becomes something you can examine rather than something you must escape. Anger becomes a signal pointing toward an unmet need or an unresolved experience. When you look at these emotions with patience, they begin to reveal the wisdom hidden inside them. Light grows stronger when it illuminates what was once hidden. Imagine entering a dark room and lighting a candle. The darkness does not fight against the flame. It simply disappears as the light spreads across the space. Your awareness works in the same way. When you bring gentle attention to the parts of yourself you once rejected, they begin to transform. The energy that was trapped in fear or confusion slowly returns to the clarity of understanding. This process is not always comfortable. There may be moments when old memories surface and ask to be felt again. There may be times when you recognize patterns in your life that were created by beliefs you never questioned before. Yet each of these realizations is a step toward integration. The more honestly you look at your experience, the more complete your awareness becomes. Integration is the harmony between light and shadow. It is the moment when you realize that every aspect of your experience belongs within the same field of consciousness. Nothing needs to be rejected because everything can be understood. When this harmony appears, the tension that once divided your inner world begins to dissolve. You may notice that your reactions change as this understanding grows. Situations that once triggered strong emotional responses begin to feel less overwhelming. Instead of being controlled by automatic habits, you observe your feelings with greater clarity. The shadow loses its power because it is no longer hidden. It has become part of the awareness that understands it. This harmony also changes the way you see others. When you recognize your own shadow, you begin to see that every person is carrying similar experiences within their own awareness. The anger you once judged in others becomes easier to understand because you have seen the roots of that emotion within yourself. Compassion grows naturally when you realize that everyone is learning how to bring their inner darkness into the light of understanding. The world begins to feel less divided. Instead of seeing people as good or bad, strong or weak, you start to see them as individuals moving through their own process of awakening. Each person is discovering how to integrate the different parts of their experience. Some are early in the journey and still struggling with the weight of their shadow. Others have begun to recognize the light that exists within their challenges. When light and shadow come into harmony, your sense of identity becomes more stable. You are no longer trying to maintain an image of perfection. You allow yourself to be a human being who continues to learn and grow. This acceptance creates a deeper form of strength because it is rooted in honesty rather than appearance. The remarkable truth is that the shadow often contains the very energy needed for transformation. The courage that appears in difficult moments grows from experiences that once felt painful. The compassion you offer to others often comes from wounds you have learned to understand. Even creativity can arise from the tension between what was hidden and what is now being expressed. In this way, darkness becomes part of the journey toward light rather than an obstacle to it. The more awareness you bring to your experience, the more clearly you see that every emotion, every memory, every challenge has contributed to the person you are becoming. Nothing was wasted. Every moment carried the possibility of deeper understanding. When this realization settles into your awareness, the idea of inner conflict begins to fade. You no longer feel the need to divide yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. Instead, you recognize that awareness itself is large enough to hold every aspect of your experience. The light within you grows brighter because it is no longer restricted by fear of what it might reveal. And when light and shadow stand together in this quiet balance, you discover something extraordinary. The awareness observing both is unchanged by either one. It is the calm presence that allows every experience to appear and disappear within it. This presence is the true center of your being, the place where understanding replaces conflict, and where the harmony between light and darkness becomes a source of wisdom rather than struggle. Awareness is the quiet center of your experience, and the moment it begins to awaken, your entire perception of life starts to change. Most people move through the world without ever noticing this awareness directly. They live inside a continuous stream of thoughts, reactions, emotions, and habits. Their attention follows whatever appears in the mind without questioning the process. Yet there is always another layer of experience present beneath the movement of thought. That layer is the simple act of noticing. The awakening of awareness begins when you recognize that you are not the thoughts passing through your mind. Thoughts appear and disappear like clouds moving across the sky. Some are bright and encouraging. Others are heavy and uncertain. They come and go without asking permission. If you watch them carefully, you will see that no thought remains forever. Even the most persistent idea eventually fades and is replaced by another. What remains constant is the awareness observing them. This realization is subtle but powerful. When you notice that thoughts are objects appearing within awareness, you begin to experience a small space between yourself and the mental activity you once believed was your identity. In that space, there is freedom. You are no longer completely carried away by every reaction that arises. Instead, you observe the movement of your mind with curiosity. At first, this observation may last only a few seconds. You might notice a thought forming and recognize it before it pulls your attention into its story. Then the mind becomes active again and you forget the quiet awareness that noticed it. This is natural. The habit of identifying with thoughts has been practiced for many years. Yet each moment of noticing strengthens the awakening of awareness. As this process continues, something remarkable begins to happen. the intensity of your reactions starts to soften. Situations that once triggered immediate emotional responses now appear with more clarity. Instead of reacting automatically, you find yourself pausing, observing the feeling that arises before deciding how to respond. That pause is the presence of awakened awareness. This awareness does not eliminate emotions. Joy, sadness, excitement, and fear still move through your experience. The difference is that these emotions are no longer the center of your identity. They are events occurring within awareness rather than definitions of who you are. You begin to understand that emotions are temporary movements of energy, not permanent truths about your life. The awakening of awareness also changes the way you see the past and the future. Much of the mind's activity is focused on memories and expectations. It replays events that have already happened and imagines scenarios that might occur later. When awareness becomes clearer, you notice that both past and future exist only as thoughts appearing in the present moment. The only place life is actually happening is here. In the awareness observing these words right now, this discovery brings a sense of calm that does not depend on circumstances. Even when life becomes busy or challenging, there remains a quiet center within you that observes everything without becoming overwhelmed. That center is not distant or mysterious. It is the simple presence that notices your breath moving in and out, the feeling of your body sitting or standing, the sounds that surround you at this moment. Many people search for awakening as if it were a dramatic event waiting to transform their lives instantly. They imagine a moment when everything suddenly becomes clear and permanent peace appears. Yet awakening is often far more gentle than that expectation. It unfolds gradually through repeated moments of noticing. Each moment of awareness dissolves a little more of the unconscious habit of living inside thought. You may begin to notice how often the mind creates unnecessary tension. A small problem appears, and the mind quickly builds a story around it, imagining outcomes that have not yet happened. Awareness interrupts this pattern by observing the story before it grows too large. Once you see the story forming, you realize that you do not need to follow it. You can return your attention to the present moment where the situation is usually much simpler than the mind imagined. As awareness continues to awaken, your sense of identity begins to shift. Instead of defining yourself entirely by your history or your roles, you recognize that these aspects of life are expressions of awareness rather than its source. You still remember your past, and you still plan for the future, but they no longer limit your understanding of who you are. This shift creates a new relationship with the world around you. The ordinary details of life become more vivid because your attention is no longer lost in constant thinking. Colors appear brighter, sounds become clearer, conversations feel more meaningful because you are truly listening instead of preparing the next thought in your mind. The present moment reveals a richness that was always there but often overlooked. You may also notice a deeper sense of connection with other people. When awareness is awake, you recognize that others are experiencing their own thoughts and emotions in the same way you once did. This recognition naturally creates patience and compassion. You understand that everyone is navigating their own journey of awakening. Whether they are aware of it or not, the awakening of awareness does not remove the challenges of life, but it transforms the way those challenges are experienced. Instead of feeling trapped inside every difficulty, you see each situation as something appearing within a larger field of awareness. This perspective allows you to respond with clarity rather than reacting from habit. Over time, the presence of awareness becomes more familiar than the noise of the mind. You still think, plan, and solve problems when necessary, but your identity is no longer tied to every thought that appears. You recognize that awareness itself is the foundation of your experience. It is the silent witness that has been present through every moment of your life. And as this understanding deepens, you begin to realize that awakening was never about becoming something new. It is about remembering the awareness that has always been here. The presence listening to these words right now is the same presence that observed your earliest memories. It has remained unchanged while every thought, emotion, and circumstance has come and gone. The awakening of awareness is simply the moment when you recognize that presence clearly. It is the quiet shift from being lost in experience to observing experience from the calm center of consciousness. In that recognition, life continues exactly as before. Yet everything is seen with a new clarity that was waiting within you all along. There is a sun within you, and most people spend their entire lives looking for its warmth everywhere except the place where it truly exists. From childhood, you were taught to look outward for light. You were told that happiness depends on circumstances, that peace depends on success, that confidence depends on approval from others. Slowly, your attention moved further and further away from the quiet center of your own awareness. Yet the truth is simple. The source of the light you seek has always been inside you. When I speak of the sun within you, I am not describing a physical object. I am describing the living presence of consciousness itself. It is the quiet intelligence that allows you to think, feel, perceive, and exist. It is the awareness that notices every experience moving through your life. This awareness does not come and go with your moods. It does not disappear when life becomes difficult. Like the sun in the sky, it continues to shine even when clouds appear to hide it. Think about a cloudy day. The sky becomes heavy and the sunlight seems to vanish behind layers of gray. Yet you know the sun has not disappeared. It continues to burn with the same intensity beyond the clouds. The clouds only change your ability to see it. In the same way, your inner light is never truly lost. Fear, doubt, anger, and confusion may pass across your awareness like clouds, but the light itself remains unchanged. Most people mistake the clouds for the sky. When difficult emotions arise, they assume something is wrong with them. They believe the light has been extinguished and that they must search outside themselves to restore it. They chase approval, possessions, achievements, and recognition, hoping that these things will bring back the brightness they feel they have lost. Yet, even when they achieve those things, the light often fades again because the source was never outside in the first place. The inner sun does not depend on circumstances. It is present even when life feels uncertain. In fact, it often becomes easier to recognize during quiet moments when the noise of the world fades away. When you sit in stillness and simply observe your breath, you may notice a calm presence beneath the movement of your thoughts. That calm presence is the beginning of recognizing the light within. This light is not dramatic or overwhelming. It is gentle and steady. It does not demand attention. It waits patiently until you are willing to notice it. The moment your awareness turns inward, you begin to feel its warmth. It appears as a quiet sense of clarity that does not require explanation. Even when your mind is uncertain about the future, there is a deeper part of you that remains calm and present. As you learn to rest your attention in this inner presence, you start to see how the mind creates unnecessary storms. A single thought of doubt can grow into a story about failure. A memory from the past can return and cover the present moment with old emotions. Yet when you observe these movements from the stillness of awareness, they lose their power. The clouds continue to move, but they no longer convince you that the sun has disappeared. The more you recognize the inner sun, the more stable your experience becomes. You no longer depend entirely on external validation to feel whole. You can appreciate success without becoming attached to it, and you can face challenges without believing they define your worth. The light within you remains steady while the circumstances around you continue to change. This stability also influences the way you interact with others. When you live from the inner sun, you naturally bring warmth into your relationships. People feel a sense of calm in your presence because you are not constantly seeking something from them. You are already connected to the source of your own clarity. Conversations become more authentic because you are listening rather than trying to prove something about yourself. The inner sun also reveals a deeper understanding of purpose. Many people believe purpose must be discovered through external achievements or specific roles in the world. Yet purpose begins with awareness itself. When you live from the light within, you naturally move toward actions that express that clarity. Your decisions become guided by presence rather than by fear of missing opportunities. This does not mean life becomes effortless or free from challenge. The clouds will still appear. Doubt may return and moments of confusion will still arise. The difference is that you now recognize these experiences as temporary movements within a larger awareness. They pass across the sky of your consciousness without destroying the light behind them. Over time, the habit of remembering the inner sun becomes stronger than the habit of forgetting it. You begin to notice how often the mind tries to pull your attention outward into constant comparison and judgment. Each time you gently return your awareness inward, the light becomes clearer again. Slowly, the center of your life shifts from external circumstances to the quiet presence of awareness. This shift changes the way you experience the world itself. Instead of feeling like a small individual struggling to control everything around you, you begin to feel connected to the living intelligence, moving through all things. The same awareness that shines within you appears in every person you meet and every moment you encounter. The remarkable truth is that the sun within you has never been separate from the light that illuminates the entire universe. The awareness that allows you to see the world is part of the same consciousness expressing itself through every form of life. When you recognize this unity, the boundaries between inner and outer experience begin to soften. You realize that the light you carry is not something fragile that must be protected from the world. It is the same presence that sustains the world itself. Every moment you remember it, the warmth spreads quietly through your thoughts, your actions, and your relationships, and eventually a simple understanding settles into your awareness. You stop searching for light in distant places because you recognize that the source has always been within you. The awareness listening to these words right now is the very sun you have been seeking, shining quietly behind every thought, every feeling, and every moment of your life. There is a figure that stands quietly at the entrance to deeper awareness, and this figure has influenced almost every decision you have made in life. It is not a person you can see, and it is not a voice that belongs to someone else. It is a pattern of thought that formed slowly over time. This pattern is what many traditions call the ego, and I want you to understand something important about it. The ego is not an enemy you must destroy. It is a gatekeeper that was created to protect you. But over time it began to believe that it must control everything. From the moment you were a child, the ego began to form its identity. It collected experiences and turned them into stories about who you are. If someone praised you, the ego remembered that praise and used it as evidence of your value. If someone criticized you, the ego stored that memory as a warning about what might happen again. Slowly, these memories formed a structure inside your mind. That structure became the voice that constantly comments on your life. The ego says this is who you are and this is who you are not. It tells you what is safe and what is dangerous. It tries to predict the future based on the past because it believes its job is to protect you from uncertainty. At first, this function was helpful. It allowed you to navigate the world and learn from experience. But over time, the ego became convinced that its role was not just protection but control. When the ego feels threatened, it creates resistance. It may appear as doubt when you try something new. It may appear as fear when you consider a different path. It may appear as the quiet voice that tells you that you are not ready or not capable. The ego does this because change feels like a loss of control. It prefers familiar patterns, even when those patterns limit your growth. Imagine a gatekeeper standing in front of a doorway. This gatekeeper has been guarding the entrance for many years. It believes that anything unknown on the other side might be dangerous. So whenever you approach the doorway, the gatekeeper asks questions. Are you sure you should go there? What if something goes wrong? What if you fail? These questions are not meant to harm you. They are meant to protect the identity the ego has built from past experiences. The challenge appears when the gatekeeper forgets that it is only a guardian and begins to believe it is the ruler of the entire house. Instead of allowing you to explore new possibilities, it starts closing doors that lead to growth. It tells you that the story of your past defines the limits of your future. It repeats familiar fears until they sound like absolute truth. This is why many people feel trapped in patterns they do not fully understand. They want to change their lives, but every attempt is followed by the same inner resistance. The ego interprets change as a threat to the identity it has carefully constructed. It prefers the safety of what is known even when that safety comes with frustration and dissatisfaction. The awakening of awareness changes your relationship with this gatekeeper. Instead of believing every thought the ego produces, you begin to observe it. You notice how quickly it forms judgments about situations and people. You see how it compares your life to the lives of others. You watch the way it creates stories about success and failure. The moment you observe the ego rather than automatically obeying it, something remarkable happens. The gatekeeper loses its authority. It remains present, but it no longer controls the entire house of your awareness. You begin to realize that the voice of the ego is simply a collection of habits formed by memory and fear. This realization does not require you to fight the ego or silence it completely. Fighting it would only create another layer of conflict within your mind. Instead, you learn to listen without becoming attached to every message it sends. When the ego says you cannot do something, you recognize the statement as a thought rather than an absolute fact. Over time, this simple observation weakens the illusion of control the ego once held. The gatekeeper begins to relax because it no longer carries the impossible responsibility of managing your entire existence. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a helpful guide that offers information from past experiences without defining the limits of your awareness. You may notice that when the ego softens, your sense of identity expands. Instead of defining yourself only through roles, achievements, or opinions, you start to feel connected to a deeper presence within you. This presence is not threatened by change. It does not need to defend itself through comparison or competition. It simply observes life as it unfolds. When awareness becomes the center of your identity, the ego naturally takes its proper place. It continues to function as a practical tool for navigating the world. It helps you remember details, organize plans, and communicate with others. But it no longer claims ownership of your entire being. This shift creates a sense of freedom that many people have never experienced before. You realize that the fears and doubts that once seemed so powerful were only echoes of past experiences repeating themselves in your mind. They were not permanent truths about who you are. The gatekeeper still stands at the doorway, but now the relationship between you has changed. Instead of blocking the path, it simply offers its observations and allows you to decide whether to move forward. Awareness becomes the one who chooses. When you understand this deeply, the ego no longer appears as a barrier to awakening. It becomes part of the journey itself. The same structure that once limited your perception now reveals the habits of thought that awareness is learning to see clearly. And in that clarity, the doorway that once seemed guarded begins to open. The gatekeeper steps aside, not because it has been defeated, but because it finally recognizes that its true role is to serve the awareness that has always been quietly observing everything from within. Fear has a reputation that it does not deserve. Most people have been taught to see fear as an obstacle that must be avoided or defeated. They believe that fear means something is wrong, that it is a sign they should stop moving forward. Yet when you look at your life more carefully, you begin to notice something remarkable. Many of the moments that changed you the most were moments when fear appeared right before you stepped into something new. Fear often stands at the edge of growth. It appears exactly at the boundary between what you already understand and what you have not yet explored. When life invites you to expand beyond familiar patterns, the mind reacts with uncertainty. The ego tries to protect the identity it has built, and that protection often takes the form of fear. It tells you that the unknown might be dangerous, that the path ahead might lead to failure or disappointment. But fear is not always a signal to retreat. Often it is a sign that you are approaching the edge of your current awareness. It is like standing before a door that leads into a larger room. The mind hesitates because it cannot predict what will happen inside that room. Yet the doorway itself represents possibility. On the other side of it, there may be knowledge, strength, and clarity that you have not yet discovered. Think about the experiences in your life that once seemed impossible. Perhaps there was a time when speaking openly in front of others felt overwhelming. Perhaps making an important decision filled you with uncertainty. Perhaps beginning a new chapter of life felt risky and uncomfortable. Yet once you stepped through that fear, something changed. The experience that once seemed intimidating slowly became familiar. What you feared was not the event itself, but the unknown space surrounding it. Fear is a messenger from the deeper intelligence within you. It highlights the places where awareness is ready to grow, but the mind has not yet adjusted to that expansion. The sensation of fear is the mind trying to maintain control over a situation it does not fully understand. When you interpret fear only as danger, you close the door that leads to transformation. When you see fear as information, you begin to recognize it as a guide. This does not mean you should ignore genuine signals of harm. There are situations where caution is necessary. The body has its own wisdom that protects you from physical danger. But many fears that appear in everyday life are not about survival. They are about identity. They are about the story the mind tells about who you are and what you are capable of becoming. When fear arises, you have an opportunity to observe it rather than immediately obey it. Notice how it feels in your body. Notice the thoughts that accompany it. Often you will discover that the mind quickly creates images of possible failure or rejection. These images are not facts. They are projections of past experiences that the ego uses to maintain its sense of safety. The moment you observe fear with awareness, its intensity begins to soften. Instead of feeling trapped inside the emotion, you become the one who is witnessing it. This shift in perspective allows you to respond differently. You can acknowledge the presence of fear while still choosing to move forward. Many great changes in life begin exactly in this way. A person decides to take one step despite uncertainty. That step may feel small at first, but it opens a new direction that was previously hidden by hesitation. Once the step is taken, the mind gradually adjusts to the new experience. What once seemed impossible becomes part of your expanding understanding. Fear also reveals where your deepest desires live. The things that matter most often carry the greatest emotional intensity. When you care deeply about something, the possibility of failure can feel frightening. Yet that same intensity shows that the experience has meaning for you. Fear is not always the enemy of passion. Sometimes it is the companion that appears whenever something truly important is about to unfold. When you begin to see fear as a doorway rather than a barrier, your relationship with it changes completely. Instead of running away from it, you become curious about what it is pointing toward. Each fear becomes a question. What new awareness might appear if I step through this moment? What part of myself might grow stronger by facing this challenge? This curiosity transforms fear into a form of energy that supports growth. The tension you once resisted becomes a source of alertness and presence. Your senses become sharper. Your attention becomes focused on the moment in front of you. Fear that once felt paralyzing becomes a signal that awareness is about to expand. Over time, you begin to trust this process. You notice that every time you move through fear, you discover something about yourself that you did not know before. Sometimes you discover resilience. Sometimes you discover creativity. Sometimes you discover that the situation you feared was never as dangerous as the mind imagined. With each experience, your confidence grows. Not because you expect life to be free of uncertainty, but because you know that awareness is capable of meeting whatever arises. The door that fear once guarded becomes easier to approach. You recognize that behind it there is always another level of understanding waiting to be explored. Eventually, fear loses its reputation as an enemy. It becomes part of the language through which life invites you to expand. The sensation that once felt like a warning becomes a reminder that you are standing at the threshold of something new. And when you learn to walk through that threshold with awareness, you discover that fear was never meant to close the path. It was simply the sign placed at the doorway to let you know that on the other side, your awareness is about to grow beyond the limits you once believed defined who you are. Doubt appears in every human life, and most people believe it is something that must be eliminated before they can move forward. They think certainty must arrive first, and only then can they act with confidence. Yet the deeper truth is very different. Doubt is not a sign that the path is wrong. Very often it is a test that appears just before awareness expands into something greater. When you understand this, your relationship with doubt begins to change. The mind naturally seeks stability. It wants clear answers, predictable outcomes, and familiar patterns that feel safe. Whenever life invites you to step beyond what you already know, the mind reacts with hesitation. It begins asking questions that seem reasonable at first. What if this does not work? What if I misunderstand the situation? What if the risk is greater than the reward? These questions are not always harmful. Sometimes they help you examine a situation carefully, but when the mind repeats them endlessly, they become a barrier that prevents growth. Doubt often appears at the exact moment when something meaningful is about to unfold. You may have noticed this pattern in your own life. Just before making an important decision, your thoughts become louder. The mind begins to review every possible mistake you could make. It searches the past for examples of failure and uses those memories as evidence that the future might lead to disappointment. In that moment, doubt feels powerful because it is speaking the language of logic and caution. Yet if you observe carefully, you will see that doubt rarely brings clarity by itself. Instead, it creates a cycle of hesitation. Each question leads to another question. Each possibility leads to another imagined outcome. The mind becomes trapped in a loop of analysis without reaching a conclusion. Meanwhile, the opportunity that once felt alive in your awareness begins to fade. The reason doubt feels so convincing is that it uses the past as its foundation. The mind believes that what happened before will happen again. It assumes that your previous experiences define the limits of what is possible, but life does not move according to the same patterns forever. Awareness grows through experiences that were once unknown. If every decision were limited by past outcomes, nothing new would ever appear. This is why doubt can be understood as a test rather than a failure. It asks a simple question without speaking it directly. Will you trust the deeper awareness within you, or will you allow the memory of past limitations to define your future? The test is not about proving that doubt is wrong. It is about recognizing that doubt is only one voice within the larger field of consciousness. When you encounter doubt, the first step is to observe it without becoming immediately identified with it. Notice how it forms sentences in your mind. Notice how it tries to predict the future based on incomplete information. The moment you see doubt as a mental process rather than an absolute truth, its influence begins to weaken. Awareness does not remove doubt by force. Instead, it places doubt within a wider perspective. You realize that the same mind that produces doubt also produces imagination, creativity, and curiosity. If you believed every thought without question, you would never discover which ones lead to growth and which ones simply repeat old fears. Think about the times when you followed an inner sense of direction even though doubt was present. Perhaps you began a project that seemed uncertain at first. Perhaps you chose to trust your intuition in a situation where logic alone could not provide an answer. In many of those moments, doubt remained in the background, yet you moved forward anyway. Later, you discovered that the experience brought lessons and opportunities you could not have predicted. These moments reveal an important truth. Courage is not the absence of doubt. Courage is the willingness to move forward even while doubt is speaking. When awareness recognizes this difference, the test of doubt becomes easier to understand. The mind can question your decisions without controlling them. Another interesting aspect of doubt is that it often appears stronger when you are close to discovering something meaningful. The ego senses that a change in awareness might alter the identity it has built over time. Because the ego is designed to maintain stability, it reacts by generating more questions and uncertainties. It attempts to protect the familiar version of yourself by suggesting that change is too risky. But awareness does not require complete certainty in order to act. Life itself is a process of exploration. Every discovery in human history began with someone who was willing to move beyond doubt and test a new possibility. If they had waited for perfect certainty, the discovery would never have occurred. This does not mean that every risk should be taken without reflection. Wisdom still involves observation and understanding. The difference is that awareness learns to balance reflection with trust. You examine a situation carefully and then listen to the quiet clarity that exists beneath the noise of doubt. That quiet clarity often speaks through intuition, through a feeling that something is worth exploring even if the outcome is unknown. When you act from that place, doubt becomes less intimidating. It remains present as a voice offering caution, but it no longer controls your direction. Each time you move forward, despite uncertainty, you strengthen the connection with your deeper awareness. The mind gradually learns that change does not always lead to danger. Sometimes it leads to discovery. Over time, the test of doubt begins to lose its intensity. You recognize its patterns quickly. When it appears, you simply observe it, consider its message, and then return your attention to the deeper awareness guiding your choices. Doubt becomes part of the journey rather than a barrier to it. Eventually, you see that doubt was never trying to stop you completely. It was inviting you to clarify your intention. It asked whether your desire for growth was strong enough to move beyond hesitation. When you respond with awareness, the test transforms into a moment of understanding. And in that understanding, something important becomes clear. The presence observing doubt is always larger than the doubt itself. That presence is the awareness listening to these words right now. It has the ability to notice every question the mind creates without being defined by any of them. From that place of awareness, you can move forward even when the mind is uncertain. Because the deeper intelligence within you is always capable of discovering the next step. Pain is something most people try to avoid as quickly as possible. From a very early age, you were taught that pain means something is wrong, and that the goal of life is to escape it whenever you can. When discomfort appears, the mind searches for distractions, explanations, or solutions that will make the feeling disappear. Yet there is a deeper truth hidden inside pain that most people never stop long enough to see. Pain is often the place where awareness begins to wake up. If you look carefully at the most important turning points in your life, you may notice a pattern. Many of the moments that forced you to grow were moments that first appeared as difficulty, a loss, a disappointment, a failure, or a sudden change that you did not expect. At the time, these experiences felt heavy and confusing. You may have asked why they were happening and wished they would disappear as quickly as possible. Yet later, when time passed and your understanding deepened, you began to see that those same experiences opened a door you might never have discovered otherwise. Pain has a strange quality. It interrupts the automatic flow of everyday life. When everything is comfortable, the mind tends to move through familiar habits without questioning them. Days pass quickly and the deeper questions of existence remain hidden beneath routine. But when pain enters the picture, the routine stops. Something inside you becomes alert. You begin to ask questions that did not seem important before. Why am I here? What truly matters? What part of my life needs to change? In this way, pain becomes a signal that awareness is ready to move beyond the patterns it once accepted. It points toward areas of life where growth has been waiting quietly beneath the surface. Without that signal, many people would continue repeating the same experiences for years without realizing that another path exists. This does not mean that pain itself is pleasant or desirable. It can feel overwhelming and confusing when it first appears. Emotions may rise with great intensity. The mind may search desperately for a way to escape the discomfort. Yet within that intensity, there is also a hidden invitation. Pain asks you to look deeper than the surface of your experience. When you begin to observe pain instead of immediately resisting it, something interesting happens. The emotion that once felt unbearable starts to reveal layers of meaning. Beneath anger, there may be a desire to be understood. Beneath sadness, there may be a deep longing for connection. Beneath disappointment, there may be the realization that your true direction lies somewhere else. The light hidden within pain appears when awareness is willing to stay present with the experience long enough to learn from it. This does not require forcing yourself to enjoy suffering or pretending that difficult emotions are not real. It simply means allowing yourself to feel what is present while observing it with curiosity rather than judgment. Think of pain as a teacher that speaks through sensation and emotion instead of words. At first, the message may seem unclear, but if you listen carefully, you begin to understand what the experience is pointing toward. Sometimes the lesson is about letting go of something that no longer supports your growth. Sometimes it is about recognizing strength you did not know you possessed. Sometimes it reveals a deeper compassion for others who are moving through similar struggles. One of the most powerful transformations occurs when you realize that pain often breaks open the walls the ego has built around your identity. The ego prefers stability and control. It wants the story of your life to remain predictable. But pain disrupts that story. It forces the mind to admit that the identity it once defended so carefully may not be the full truth of who you are. In those moments, awareness has the opportunity to expand. When the old story no longer feels complete, you begin to search for a deeper understanding of yourself. This search leads you beyond the surface of personality into the quiet presence that observes every experience. The pain that once seemed like an enemy becomes the doorway through which that deeper awareness appears. Many people discover their greatest compassion after moving through difficult periods in their lives. Experiences that once felt isolating eventually allow them to understand the struggles of others more clearly. When you have felt pain yourself, you recognize it more easily in the hearts of those around you. This recognition softens judgment and replaces it with empathy. Pain also teaches patience. Growth rarely happens in a single moment. Just as a wound takes time to heal, the emotional experiences of life unfold gradually. Awareness learns to move gently through the process rather than demanding immediate answers. In that patience, the deeper meaning of the experience slowly becomes visible. Over time, you may begin to see that pain and clarity are often connected in ways that are not obvious at first. The experiences that once felt like obstacles become turning points that guided you toward greater understanding. Without them, you might never have questioned the patterns that limited your awareness. This realization does not erase the memory of difficulty, but it changes the way you hold it. Instead of seeing pain only as something that harmed you, you begin to see how it revealed hidden strength within you. The light behind the pain becomes visible because awareness has learned to look beyond the surface of the experience. When this understanding deepens, your relationship with life changes. Challenges no longer appear only as problems to be solved. They become opportunities to listen more carefully to the movement of awareness within you. Each difficulty carries the possibility of insight if you are willing to remain present long enough to see it, and eventually you recognize something extraordinary. The awareness that observes pain is never damaged by the experience itself. It remains steady beneath every emotion and every story the mind creates. That awareness is the light hidden behind the darkest moments of life. It shines quietly even when clouds of suffering seem to cover it. When you discover this light, you realize that pain was never the final destination. It was the doorway through which awareness learned to recognize its own depth. The same presence that carried you through those difficult moments is the presence listening to these words right now. Calm, steady, and quietly illuminating the path ahead. Beneath the surface of your everyday thoughts, there is a quiet current moving through your awareness. Most people never notice it because their attention stays on the surface of the mind, where thoughts rise and fall like small waves, plans for the future, memories of the past, reactions to situations around you. All of these movements create constant activity in the mind. Yet beneath this surface movement there is something deeper, flowing silently. I call it the river of the soul's memory. This river is not memory in the ordinary sense that your mind understands. It is not simply a collection of events from your childhood or images from your past. It is something far deeper. It is the quiet stream of awareness that existed before the story of your life began and continues to flow beneath every experience you have. Most of the time you live on the surface of the mind. Thoughts appear and disappear, and your attention follows them automatically. When a memory appears, you travel into the past. When a worry appears, you travel into the future. The surface of the mind keeps moving, and because it moves so constantly, it becomes easy to forget that there is a deeper stillness beneath it. But every once in a while, something unusual happens. You hear an idea for the first time, and yet it feels strangely familiar. You listen to a sentence, and something inside you immediately recognizes it. Your mind may say this is new information, yet another part of you quietly responds with a feeling that says, I already knew this. That feeling is not imagination. It is the river of memory touching the surface of your awareness. The soul does not remember the way the mind remembers. The mind stores images and stories from the past, but the soul remembers through recognition. When truth appears, it does not feel foreign. It feels like something returning. It feels like a quiet remembering rather than a new discovery. You may have experienced this in other ways as well. Perhaps you met someone for the first time and felt an unexpected familiarity. Perhaps you entered a place you had never visited, and yet something about it felt known. Your mind tried to explain the experience, but the explanation never quite captured the feeling. These moments are small openings in the surface of the mind where the deeper current becomes visible. The river of the soul's memory does not move according to the linear time that the mind understands. The mind believes that everything moves from past to present to future. But the river of awareness exists beyond that simple structure. It carries impressions of understanding that do not belong to one moment in time. This is why intuition often feels mysterious. You may suddenly know something without knowing how you know it. A quiet certainty appears before the mind has gathered any logical evidence. That certainty does not come from analysis. It rises from the deeper current beneath your thoughts. When people ignore this inner guidance, they often feel lost, even when they have many plans. The mind continues creating strategies and predictions, yet something still feels incomplete. The reason is simple. The surface of the mind is trying to navigate life without listening to the deeper intelligence that flows beneath it. The moment you begin to listen to that deeper current, life begins to feel different. You may notice small synchronicities appearing more often. You think about something and suddenly encounter the exact information you needed. You ask a question within yourself, and later the answer appears through a conversation, to a book, or a simple observation. These experiences are not accidents. They are signs that awareness is beginning to move with the deeper current instead of struggling against it. The river of memory becomes clearer whenever the mind grows quiet. This often happens in moments of stillness. When you walk alone in nature and allow your thoughts to slow down, when you sit silently and observe your breath without trying to control it, when the noise of constant thinking fades for a moment, in those quiet spaces the surface of the mind becomes calm like a lake without wind. And when the surface becomes calm, the deeper current can finally be felt. You may begin to sense subtle guidance in your decisions. Instead of forcing answers through endless analysis, You feel a gentle direction emerging from within. This direction does not shout or demand attention. It simply feels right in a quiet and steady way. Over time, you begin to trust this feeling more than the endless arguments of the mind. You realize that the deeper current has been guiding your life all along, even when you were not aware of it. The river of the soul's memory does not control your path. You still have freedom to choose and explore. But when you listen to it, your choices begin to align with a deeper intelligence moving through your life. Life stops feeling like a random collection of events. It begins to feel like a journey unfolding through subtle connections and quiet guidance. And eventually you discover something extraordinary. The awareness, listening to these words right now, is not separate from that river. It is part of the same current that has been flowing through every moment of your life. When you listen deeply enough, you realize that the wisdom you have been searching for outside of yourself has always been moving silently within you. Like a river that never stopped flowing even when the surface of the mind was too restless to see it. Dreams speak a language that the ordinary mind often forgets how to understand. When you fall asleep, the noise of the waking world becomes quiet and the constant stream of thoughts begins to slow down. The identity you carry during the day relaxes its grip, and awareness enters a different landscape where symbols replace logic and emotions become messages rather than reactions. In that landscape, the soul communicates in a way that does not rely on the rules of ordinary conversation. Most people wake from a dream and dismiss it as imagination. The mind quickly tries to interpret the experience using the same logic it uses during the day. When the dream does not follow the expected structure, the mind labels it as meaningless and moves on. Yet the language of dreams was never meant to follow the logic of the waking world. It speaks through images, feelings, and symbols that carry meaning beneath the surface of the story. Think about the way the mind communicates when it is awake. Words are arranged in careful order, and each sentence tries to describe reality in a precise way. Dreams do something very different. They compress experiences into symbolic scenes that can represent many layers of meaning at once. A single image in a dream may contain emotions from the past, questions from the present, and possibilities that have not yet appeared in your waking life. Because dreams operate through symbols, they can reveal aspects of your awareness that the waking mind often ignores. During the day, your thoughts are influenced by habits and expectations. You follow familiar patterns of thinking that shape the way you see the world. When you dream, those patterns loosen. The deeper layers of the mind begin to express themselves without the same restrictions. This is why dreams sometimes feel mysterious or even confusing. The images you see may not follow ordinary rules. A place may suddenly change into another place. A person may appear in several forms at once. These changes are not random. They reflect the fluid nature of awareness when it is not limited by the structure of waking identity. The dream is not trying to tell a logical story. It is revealing the movement of your inner world. Many people notice that dreams often highlight emotions that were not fully expressed during the day. If you ignored a feeling of frustration, it may appear in a dream as a situation where you are unable to move forward. If you felt a quiet hope about something new, it may appear as an image of walking toward a distant horizon. The dream translates emotional energy into symbolic experience so that awareness can observe it more clearly. Sometimes dreams carry guidance that becomes meaningful only after time has passed. A symbol that seems strange at first may later connect with an event in your waking life. This does not mean that dreams always predict the future. More often, they reveal the direction in which your awareness is already moving. They show the patterns forming beneath the surface of conscious thought. The language of dreams also reminds you that your awareness is larger than the identity you use during the day. When you dream, you experience different environments and roles without questioning them. One moment you may be walking through a familiar place. The next moment you may find yourself in a landscape that does not exist in the physical world. Yet during the dream it all feels natural because awareness is not restricted by the same boundaries. When you wake up, the mind returns and begins organizing reality again. The identity you call yourself resumes its role. Yet the memory of the dream sometimes lingers like an echo from a deeper part of consciousness. That echo is an invitation to listen more carefully to the language that awareness uses when it is free from the habits of waking thought. You may begin to notice that certain dreams repeat themselves in different forms over time. The same themes appear again and again, sometimes with new details. This repetition is not accidental. It is the mind drawing attention to something that has not yet been fully understood. The dream continues to speak until awareness recognizes the message it carries. Keeping a simple awareness of your dreams can gradually strengthen your connection with this inner language. When you wake up and recall even a small part of a dream, you are acknowledging that the deeper layers of your mind are active and meaningful. Over time, the memory of dreams may become clearer and their patterns easier to recognize. It is important to remember that dreams are not puzzles that must always be solved with exact answers. Their value often lies in the feeling they leave behind. A dream may reveal an emotion you had not fully noticed. It may show a possibility that your waking mind had not considered. Sometimes it simply reminds you that awareness continues to move and explore even while the body rests. The deeper significance of dreams becomes clearer when you understand that awareness does not disappear when you fall asleep. The body rests, and the mind releases its usual control. But consciousness continues to experience and observe. The dream world is another field where awareness explores its own nature. In this sense, dreams become a bridge between the surface mind and the deeper current of the soul. They translate the silent movement of that deeper current into images that your waking mind can eventually recognize. The language may appear mysterious at first, but its purpose is simple. It is another way for awareness to understand itself. When you begin to respect this language, something subtle changes in your relationship with sleep and waking life. You realize that consciousness does not begin when you wake up and end when you fall asleep. It continues through both states, exploring different dimensions of experience. And as this understanding grows, you may start to see dreams not as random stories, but as quiet messages carried by the deeper intelligence within you. They are reminders that awareness is always moving, always observing, and always communicating with itself through symbols, emotions, and images that reach far beyond the limits of ordinary thought. Life often teaches in ways that are quiet and unexpected. Most people imagine that a teacher must appear in a clear and recognizable form, someone wise who offers guidance through direct words and instruction. Yet the deeper truth is that life places teachers everywhere around you, often in forms that do not immediately look like lessons. These hidden teachers appear through experiences, through ordinary people, and sometimes through the very challenges that once felt like obstacles. When you begin to observe life with awareness, you start to notice that every encounter carries the potential for understanding. A conversation with a stranger may reveal an idea that changes your perspective. A disagreement with someone close to you may show you something about your own reactions that you had not noticed before. Even moments that seem inconvenient or frustrating may hold subtle insights if you look at them with curiosity instead of resistance. The mind often prefers simple explanations. It labels people as helpful or difficult, events as good or bad. But awareness sees a more complex pattern. The people who appear in your life often reflect aspects of your own inner world. When someone inspires you, it may be because they express qualities that already exist within you but have not yet been fully recognized. When someone irritates you, it may reveal habits of thought or emotion that are waiting to be understood. In this way, every interaction becomes a mirror that reflects something about your awareness. The teacher is not always the person speaking. Sometimes the lesson appears through your own reaction. A moment of impatience might reveal the importance of patience. A moment of misunderstanding might encourage deeper listening. These experiences are not accidental. They are opportunities for awareness to expand. Nature also acts as a quiet teacher. When you spend time observing the natural world, you begin to notice rhythms that exist beyond human concerns. The changing of seasons, the movement of clouds, the steady growth of trees. All of these patterns reveal something about the nature of life itself. They remind you that growth often happens slowly and that transformation does not require constant struggle. A seed does not force itself to become a tree. It grows by responding to the conditions around it. Challenges often become some of the most powerful hidden teachers. At first, they appear as difficulties that disrupt your plans. They may cause frustration or disappointment. Yet when you look back at them later, you may realize that they guided you toward a deeper understanding of yourself. A failure may have shown you a new direction that you would not have considered otherwise. A moment of loss may have revealed the strength you carried within you all along. The mind usually resists these experiences because it prefers comfort and certainty. It tries to remove obstacles as quickly as possible, without asking what the situation might be teaching. Awareness approaches the same situation differently. Instead of reacting immediately, it pauses and observes. It asks what this moment might reveal about the patterns of thought or emotion that shape your life. Sometimes the hidden teacher appears in the form of someone who challenges your perspective. A person with different beliefs or experiences may introduce ideas that feel unfamiliar at first. The ego may respond with defensiveness because it wants to protect its sense of certainty. Yet, if you listen carefully, you may discover that even disagreement can contain valuable insight. The presence of another perspective expands the range of possibilities your awareness can consider. Other times, the teacher appears through silence rather than conversation. A quiet moment alone may bring clarity that no amount of discussion could provide. When the mind becomes still, you may suddenly understand something that had seemed confusing before. The lesson was always present, but the noise of constant thinking prevented you from hearing it. You may also notice that certain themes repeat in your life. Similar situations appear again with different details. Similar emotions arise in different relationships. This repetition is often a sign that a lesson is waiting to be understood. Life presents the experience again and again until awareness recognizes the pattern and learns from it. When you begin to see life in this way, the idea of hidden teachers becomes very natural. Every moment carries the potential for learning because awareness is always observing and interpreting experience. The world becomes less like a random sequence of events and more like a living classroom where every interaction contributes to your understanding. This perspective also encourages humility. You realize that wisdom does not belong only to those who appear knowledgeable. Anyone you meet may carry a lesson that reveals something about yourself or about the nature of life. A child may express curiosity that reminds you how to see the world with fresh attention. An older person may share experiences that show the value of patience and reflection. Even the people who seem most difficult can become unexpected teachers. Their behavior may challenge your ability to remain calm or compassionate. In responding to them, you may discover new strengths within yourself. The lesson may not be about changing the other person, but about recognizing the depth of your own awareness. Over time, this understanding changes the way you move through the world. Instead of searching only for obvious sources of guidance, you become open to learning from every situation. You listen more carefully, observe more patiently, and reflect more deeply on the experiences that shape your life. You begin to trust that awareness is always being invited to grow. Each encounter becomes part of a larger process of understanding. The teachers who appear in your life may not always look extraordinary, but their presence reveals something essential about the journey of awareness. Eventually, you realize that the greatest teacher has been present within you all along. The awareness observing these experiences is constantly learning from them. The people you meet and the situations you encounter simply provide the reflections through which that awareness recognizes itself more clearly. And when you see life in this way, the world itself becomes a field of hidden teachers, each moment offering another opportunity for awareness to deepen its understanding of the life that is unfolding through you. There is a quiet principle moving through every part of life, a principle so subtle that most people never recognize it, even though they experience its effects every day. I call it the law of resonance. It is the simple truth that the state of your awareness interacts with the world around you, and the experiences that appear in your life often reflect the inner frequency you are holding. Most people believe that life happens only from the outside in. They think events appear randomly, and then their emotions respond to those events. Something good happens and they feel happy. Something difficult happens and they feel discouraged. In this view, the world controls the inner experience. Yet when you observe more carefully, you begin to notice that the relationship between inner awareness and outer events is far more dynamic than that. Your thoughts, emotions, expectations, and beliefs all carry a certain tone within your awareness. This tone is not something you can measure with physical instruments, yet it influences the way you perceive and respond to the world. When your inner state is filled with tension, you begin to notice problems more easily. When your awareness is calm, you recognize opportunities that might have been invisible before. The law of resonance does not mean that your thoughts magically create every event that occurs in the world. Life is far more complex than a simple cause and effect between a single thought and a single outcome. What it means is that the quality of your awareness shapes the way you interact with the field of experiences around you. Think about the way a musical instrument responds to sound. If two instruments are tuned to the same note and one begins to vibrate, the other may begin to resonate with it even without being touched. The vibration travels through the air, and the second instrument responds because its structure matches the frequency. Awareness works in a similar way. The inner tone you carry influences what you notice, how you interpret situations, and which possibilities feel natural to pursue. For example, when someone moves through life with constant expectation of failure, their attention unconsciously searches for evidence that confirms that belief. They may overlook opportunities because they assume those opportunities will not succeed. When challenges appear, they interpret them as proof that their expectations were correct. The outer experience seems to confirm the inner belief, even though the belief itself influenced how the situation was approached. On the other hand, when someone carries a sense of openness and curiosity, their awareness naturally moves toward possibilities. They notice connections between events that others might miss. They are more willing to take small steps that lead toward new experiences. Over time, those small steps create outcomes that reinforce their inner sense of possibility. This is the subtle power of resonance. It does not force reality to obey your thoughts, but it shapes the relationship between your awareness and the world you encounter. The inner tone you hold influences the direction of your attention, the choices you make, and the way you interpret what happens next. You can see this clearly in human relationships. When someone approaches others with suspicion or defensiveness, the interactions often become tense. People respond to the emotional tone that is present in the conversation. When someone approaches others with genuine curiosity and calm attention, the same interaction can unfold very differently. The emotional atmosphere changes because the inner state of one person influences the field of connection between them. The law of resonance also explains why certain ideas or opportunities appear at specific moments in life. When your awareness shifts, you become sensitive to different possibilities. A book that once seemed uninteresting suddenly becomes meaningful. A conversation that might have passed unnoticed before now feels important. The world itself may not have changed dramatically, but your awareness has moved into alignment with new patterns of understanding. This alignment is often what people describe as synchronicity. Events appear to connect in ways that seem meaningful rather than random. A thought arises, and shortly afterward, something in the external world reflects that thought. A question forms within you, and the answer appears through an unexpected source. These experiences are not mysterious when you understand resonance. Your awareness has tuned itself to a particular pattern, and the environment around you begins to reflect that pattern more clearly. The important point is that resonance begins within awareness. When you change the tone of your inner experience, the field of possibilities you notice also changes. This does not happen instantly in every situation, but over time the direction of your life begins to follow the pattern of your awareness. This is why cultivating clarity within yourself is so powerful. When your mind becomes less crowded with constant worry, you begin to perceive the world more accurately. When you hold a sense of calm presence, your decisions become more balanced. The resonance of awareness begins to attract experiences that reflect that stability. You may notice that when you feel deeply grateful, the world seems to reveal more things to appreciate. When you move through a period of creativity, new ideas appear more easily. These shifts are not coincidences. They are examples of how the tone of awareness influences the way life unfolds around you. Understanding resonance also encourages responsibility for your inner world. Instead of believing that your emotions are only reactions to external events, you begin to recognize that your awareness participates in shaping your experience. This recognition is not about blaming yourself for difficulties. It is about realizing that you have the ability to influence the quality of your perception and response. When you become aware of the tone within your mind, you gain the freedom to adjust it. You can choose to pause instead of reacting immediately. You can observe a negative thought without allowing it to dominate your attention. You can bring your awareness back to the present moment, where clarity is easier to find. Over time, this practice transforms the resonance you carry into the world. Your inner state becomes less reactive and more centered. As that shift occurs, the experiences you attract and recognize begin to change as well. Eventually, you begin to understand that resonance is not only a personal principle but a universal one. Every form of life responds to patterns of energy and awareness. The same intelligence that moves through nature also moves through human consciousness. When your awareness becomes aligned with that intelligence, life begins to flow with greater harmony. And when you recognize this truth, something simple yet powerful becomes clear. The awareness listening to these words right now is not separate from the field of life around it. The tone you hold within your consciousness quietly resonates with the world, shaping the way reality reveals itself moment by moment. For a long time, many people have believed that the spiritual path means escaping the world. They imagine that awakening requires leaving behind ordinary life, separating from daily responsibilities, and searching for truth somewhere far away from the noise of human activity. Yet the deeper realization reveals something very different. True understanding does not divide heaven and earth. It brings them into harmony within your own awareness. Heaven is often used as a symbol for the realm of consciousness, the invisible field of intelligence that exists beyond physical form. Earth represents the world of matter, the place where life expresses itself through bodies, actions, and relationships. For centuries, people have spoken about these two realms as if they were separate worlds. But when awareness begins to awaken, you start to see that the division exists only in the way the mind interprets experience. The same awareness that allows you to think and perceive also moves through every physical action you perform. When you breathe, walk, speak, and interact with others, consciousness is present in every moment. There is no place where awareness stops and matter begins. The life that animates your body is the same life that animates the entire world around you. This realization transforms the meaning of everyday life. Ordinary actions no longer feel separate from spiritual understanding. Washing your hands, preparing food, walking down a street, or listening to another person can all become expressions of the same awareness that once seemed hidden behind meditation or contemplation. The sacred does not exist only in silence or solitude. It exists within every movement of life when awareness is present. Many people imagine awakening as a dramatic event that removes them from the concerns of the world. They believe enlightenment means living in constant peace without engaging with ordinary responsibilities. Yet the deeper truth is much simpler and more grounded. Awakening allows you to live fully within the world, while recognizing the awareness that flows through every moment. Think of a tree growing from the earth. Its roots reach deep into the soil while its branches stretch upward toward the sky. The tree does not choose between earth and sky. It connects both. In the same way, human awareness has the ability to connect the physical world with the deeper intelligence of consciousness. Your life becomes the place where these two dimensions meet. When this understanding grows within you, the idea of separation begins to dissolve. Work is no longer separate from meaning. Relationships are no longer separate from growth. Every experience becomes part of a living process through which awareness learns about itself. The challenges you face are not distractions from the path. They are part of the path itself. This perspective changes the way you approach daily life. Instead of rushing through moments as if they are only steps towards something more important, you begin to experience each moment as complete in itself. The simple act of breathing becomes a reminder that life is present now. Listening to another person becomes an opportunity to share awareness rather than simply exchange words. When heaven and earth unite within awareness, the sense of purpose becomes clearer. You no longer feel that meaning must be discovered somewhere far away in the future. Meaning appears naturally in the quality of attention you bring to each moment. The way you speak, the way you listen, the way you respond to situations, all become expressions of the awareness that lives within you. This unity also removes the pressure to escape difficulties. When challenges appear, you do not see them as signs that something has gone wrong with your spiritual path. Instead, you recognize them as experiences occurring within the same field of awareness that contains peace and clarity. The presence within you remains steady even while circumstances change. Many ancient traditions describe this understanding as bringing heaven down to earth. The phrase does not mean creating a perfect world without struggle. It means allowing awareness to illuminate the ordinary experiences of life. When you live from this perspective, the boundary between the sacred and the ordinary disappears. You may notice that moments of deep presence often occur in simple situations. Watching sunlight move across a room, feeling the rhythm of your breath, or sharing a quiet conversation can reveal a sense of unity that does not depend on extraordinary circumstances. These moments remind you that awareness is already here, expressing itself through every aspect of the world. Over time, the habit of separation fades. You stop dividing life into spiritual moments and ordinary moments. Everything becomes part of the same movement of consciousness exploring itself. The work you do, the relationships you form, and the choices you make all become ways of expressing the awareness that lives within you. When heaven and earth meet in this way, a quiet balance appears. You remain fully engaged with the physical world, while also recognizing the deeper presence that gives life its meaning. The body moves through daily activities while awareness remains open and attentive. This balance creates a sense of harmony that does not depend on external perfection. Even in a world that contains uncertainty and change, there is a stable center within you. That center is the awareness that observes and participates at the same time. Eventually, you realize that the union of heaven and earth was never something that needed to be created. It has always existed through your own consciousness. The awareness listening to these words right now is the meeting point between the invisible intelligence of life and the physical world in which that intelligence expresses itself. When you recognize this clearly, the search for separation ends. Heaven is no longer somewhere above you, and earth is no longer something you must escape. They meet in the quiet presence of awareness, in the simple fact that you are here, alive, and able to experience the unfolding of life through the consciousness that connects everything. Every journey of awareness eventually leads to the same quiet realization. The truth you have been searching for was never somewhere far away. It was never hidden in distant places or reserved for a select few. The light you were seeking has always been present within the awareness that is experiencing this moment right now. The journey was not about finding the light. It was about remembering it. For most of your life, the mind told you a different story. It suggested that meaning had to be achieved, that clarity had to be earned, and that peace would only arrive when certain conditions were finally met. You were taught to search outside yourself for confirmation that you were moving in the right direction. Approval, success, recognition, and knowledge appeared to be the milestones that would eventually lead you to fulfillment. Yet the deeper you look into the nature of awareness, the more clearly you begin to see that these milestones were never the final destination. They were experiences along the path, but they were not the source of the light itself. The light exists before every achievement and remains after every failure. It is the quiet presence that has been observing every step of your life without ever losing its clarity. When you begin to recognize this presence, the idea of a long search starts to soften. You realize that awareness has been with you through every moment, through every question, through every experience that shaped the person you have become. Even during the times when you felt lost, the awareness observing that feeling was still calm and unchanged beneath the surface. This realization is what I call the return to the light. It is not a dramatic transformation where the world suddenly becomes perfect. Instead, it is a gentle recognition that the essence of what you are has never been separated from the clarity you were seeking. The journey brought you back to the awareness that has always been here. When this understanding settles into your experience, something inside you relaxes. The need to struggle for identity begins to fade. You no longer feel that you must constantly prove your value through external achievements. You begin to trust the quiet intelligence within awareness itself. This trust does not remove the challenges of life, but it changes the way you move through them. You may notice that your relationship with the past begins to change. Memories that once carried heavy emotions now appear with greater understanding. Instead of seeing them only as mistakes or regrets, you start to see how they contributed to the unfolding of awareness in your life. Every experience played a role in bringing you to this moment of recognition. The future also begins to look different. Instead of feeling like an uncertain territory that must be controlled, you begin to experience it as a natural continuation of the present moment. Awareness remains steady while circumstances continue to evolve. You move forward with curiosity rather than fear, because you know that the light within you will remain present regardless of what happens. This return to the light also deepens your connection with others. When you recognize the awareness within yourself, you naturally begin to see that same presence in every person you meet. Beneath the differences of personality and history, there is a shared consciousness that connects all human experience. This recognition encourages compassion because you understand that others are also moving through their own journey of remembering. Even the world itself begins to feel different when seen through this understanding. The ordinary moments of life become meaningful because awareness is present within them. The sound of the wind, the rhythm of footsteps on a quiet street, the warmth of sunlight on your skin. All of these experiences reflect the same living presence that exists within you. The return to the light does not require special conditions. It happens whenever awareness recognizes itself without distraction. It may occur in a quiet moment of reflection, during a simple walk, or in the stillness between thoughts. The recognition does not depend on where you are or what you are doing. It depends only on the clarity with which awareness observes itself. Over time, this clarity becomes more familiar. You begin to notice the difference between being lost in thought and resting in awareness. Thoughts still appear. Emotions still move through your experience, but they no longer define the center of your identity. The light remains steady while these experiences rise and fall like waves on the surface of the ocean. Eventually, you understand that the journey of awareness is not about reaching a final destination. It is about continually remembering the presence that already exists. Each moment becomes an opportunity to recognize that presence again and again. When you see life in this way, the search for meaning becomes much simpler. Meaning is not something hidden somewhere in the future. It is the quality of awareness you bring to the present moment. Every breath, every conversation, every quiet observation of the world becomes part of the same unfolding recognition, and in that recognition something beautiful becomes clear. The awareness listening to these words right now is the same light that has been guiding every step of your life. It was present before you began asking questions, and it will remain long after every question has been answered. The journey you thought was leading you somewhere new has gently brought you back to the beginning, to the simple truth that the light you were searching for has always been the awareness through which you experience everything.